coffee pot still boiling, cigarettes on the counter. 5 kids walk through an unlocked door, December 15th, 1995. Mom and Dad? Gone. Ruth Markley was 15 years old when she stepped off that school bus that Friday afternoon. Her dad's sister had just died 2 days earlier, his twin sister, Bonnie. The funeral was that night. Her little brother Johnny was turning 8 that same day. But when Ruth walked into that house in Bristolville, Ohio around 3:15 p.m., nobody home. The front door was unlocked, which never happened. Their red and silver Chevy pickup truck was gone from the driveway. Inside, the coffee pot was still on the burner, nearly boiled dry. On the kitchen counter, her mom's pack of Marlboro cigarettes. Shelly Markley was a pack-a-day smoker. She never left the house without her cigarettes. Never. Next to the cigarettes, her lighter, her cigarette case, her purse. On the shelf above the stove, her dad's wristwatch. John Markley wore that watch every single day, put it on first thing in the morning, never took it off. Never. Ruth walked upstairs to her parents' bedroom. On the bed, 2 suits laid out, her mom's formal outfits next to them. The clothes they were planning to wear to Bonnie's funeral that night. But that's not what made Ruth's blood run cold. The gun cabinet in the corner of the room, wide open. Her father never unlocked that gun cabinet, not with 5 kids in the house. It was always locked. The small safe from the walk-in closet, sitting on the bathroom counter, open. Birth certificates scattered across the sink, papers strewn everywhere like someone had been frantically searching for something. Ruth walked out to the garage. Her dad's 1978 apple red Corvette was sitting in its usual spot, but the 2 tarps that always covered it, missing. John Markley was obsessed with that Corvette. He never left it exposed, not even for 5 minutes. Ruth called her aunt. "Have you seen Mom and Dad?" Her aunt said no, but told Ruth not to panic. They probably just went to the mall to buy a suit for the funeral. So Ruth waited. 5:30 p.m. came. Time to leave for the funeral home. Still no sign of John or Shelly. The viewing went from 5:30 to 9 p.m. 3.5 hours. John and Shelly never showed. And that's when everyone knew. Because if there was one thing you could say about John and Shelly Markley, they would never miss that funeral. Just after midnight on December 16, 1995, Ruth's aunt called the Trumbull County Sheriff's Office. John and Shelly Markley were officially reported missing. John Markley Jr. was born July 8, 1959 in Valdosta, Georgia, one of 10 children. He had a twin sister named Bonnie. By the time John turned 14, most of the family had settled in Trumbull County, Ohio. Rural, quiet, about an hour east of Cleveland. John was kind-hearted and fun-loving, but more than anything else, family came first. Loyalty and devotion weren't just choices for John. They were a way of life. Shelly Renee Applequist was born November 16, 1963 in Warren, Ohio, one of 5 children. Smart, sweet, and kind. Warm, but somewhat shy. When John and Shelly met, there was an undeniable spark. On November 30th, 1979, they were married. John was 20, Shelly was 16. Over the next 16 years, they had 5 children, 4 girls, Ruthie, Stacy, Bonnie, and Crystal, and 1 son, Johnny. John became an independent truck driver, eventually formed his own company, Markley Trucking. Shelly stayed home with the kids, devoted, caring, somehow managed to wrangle all 5 kids every week to go grocery shopping. John was loving and protective, a bit strict, told his daughters they couldn't date until they were 16, probably because Shelly was 16 when they married. In 1993, the Markleys lost their home in a fire. July 4th, 1993, everything gone. But they rebounded quickly, purchased a 4-bedroom home on just over an acre in West Farmington. Very rural. Population 542 people. They used what funds they had to completely pay off the home. John owned at least 2 semi-trucks, but the pride and joy of his vehicles was a beautifully maintained 1978 deep apple red Corvette, always kept in the garage beneath 2 tarps. That car was John's baby. But while things were going well, 1994 would prove devastating. July 4th, 1994, exactly 1 year after their house burned down, John's father passed away at age 80. 1 month later, in August, a nephew also passed away following a struggle with depression. But the worst loss was still to come, and it would happen just 2 days before John and Shelly vanished. In 1992, John's twin sister Bonnie was diagnosed with breast cancer. John was devastated. He did everything in his power to help her fight it. The family managed to raise $15,000 to send her to Tijuana, Mexico for experimental treatments. John even sold his above-ground pool to contribute additional money. Bonnie spent 6 weeks in Mexico during the summer of 1995. But when she returned and saw a doctor, he informed her that her condition was terminal. December 13th, 1995. John was there the night his sister passed away. He had taken it harder than the rest of his siblings. John's sister Linda later said, "He never prayed so hard all his life to God to heal her. He was angry." According to the children, they saw their father sobbing, repeating over and over, "Part of me is gone. Part of me is gone." A viewing was scheduled for the evening of Friday, December 15th. The funeral the next day, Saturday the 16th. John managed to pull himself together the next day, still heartbroken but determined to be there for the family. Neither John nor Shelly would make it to the viewing or the funeral. The morning of December 15th, 7:30 to 10, Friday, December 15th was a cold and wet day in Trumbull County. Temperatures in the mid-30s. Johnny's 8th birthday. Bonnie's funeral that evening. Young Johnny was the last family member to see his parents. After breakfast, Shelly walked him to his bus stop, waited with him until approximately 8:30 a.m. when the bus arrived. This was the last time any member of the Markley family would see either John or Shelly. We already know what Ruth found when she came home. After Ruth's aunt and uncle arrived around 4 p.m., they waited with the kids for John and Shelly. They never showed. At 5:30 p.m., they left for the funeral home. The viewing lasted over 3 hours and concluded at 9 p.m. The house was still empty when they returned. Just after midnight, they contacted the Trumbull County Sheriff's Office. The funeral began at 2 p.m. on Saturday. Up until the moment of the service, everyone expected to see John and Shelly walk in, but they never showed. The only members of the family who did not attend, John and Shelly. After the service, the family gathered at a local VFW hall. That's when the news was broken to everyone. John and Shelly were missing. The sheriff's office was now involved. Early Sunday morning, December 17th, deputies spotted a truck matching the description of John and Shelly's Chevy in the parking lot of Stambaugh's hardware store, approximately 15 miles from the family home. The truck was coated in dirt, like it had been driven off-road. So dirty that someone had written "Wash Me" on one of the doors. John and Shelly were not in the habit of driving off-road, nor did they let dirt build up like this. The doors were locked. The keys were nowhere to be found. In fact, they have never been found. Inside the cab, the couple's cell phone on the center console. In the bed of the vehicle, a tire for a semi-truck. And beneath it, the two missing tarps from John's Corvette, one blue, one green. The truck was impounded. A full sweep for evidence was conducted. Nothing of evidentiary value was found, not even an unidentified fingerprint or hair. Here's the interesting part. John's niece actually saw the truck before police found it. She was at the Walmart across the street, saw the truck covered in mud, walked over and wrote, "Hi, Uncle John," in the dirt. Figured he and Shelly were inside shopping. But when she came out, the truck was gone. Someone moved it, probably across the street to where police eventually found it. The family immediately got police to check Walmart surveillance footage. But by the time they checked, the tape had been recorded over. Deputies examined data from the couple's bank. The last transaction occurred on Friday, December 15th at 10:36 a.m., just over 2 hours after Shelly put Johnny on the bus. A personal check made out to cash and signed by Shelly was cashed for $1,000, leaving only $865 in the account. The bank was in Bloomfield, a little over 7 miles north of the family home. Deputies interviewed the teller who'd been working the drive-up window. She said the red over silver Chevy drove up. Shelly leaned out and signed the check right there on the dashboard. John was in the driver's seat. Shelly sat in the middle, wedged between him and another man she was unable to identify. She could only describe him as a dark-haired man with a slender build. It wasn't much to go on. And there were no cameras covering the drive-through window. This bank transaction, the last known sighting of the couple, was the last solid piece of information investigators uncovered. The case was already beginning to grow cold. For little Johnny, his Christmas list was only one sentence long. All I want for Christmas is Mom and Dad.
All right, everyone. Let me tell you what's getting me about this visit. It's 10:36 a.m. Shelly Markley's sitting in the middle seat of a Chevy truck. Think about the physics of this. She is wedged between her husband, John, and a complete stranger. This wasn't a casual ride to the bank. This is a hostage situation on wheels. When Shelly signed that check for exactly $1,000 on the dashboard, she wasn't just cashing a check. She was paying a debt she didn't owe. And then there's the truck. When police found it 2 days later, it was caked in mud. Not just little splashes, it was filthy. John Markley was a man who was totally obsessed with his red Corvette. He didn't do mud. He didn't do off-roading. That mud is a map, and it tells us between the bank and that hardware store parking lot, that truck went into the deep, wet brush of the Ohio backcountry. Someone took that truck into the woods. They didn't care about the paint job because they knew the owner was never coming back to clean it. The person who wrote "Wash Me" on the door thought they were being funny. They didn't realize they were looking at a 4,000-pound piece of evidence that just came back from a burial.
Just a few days after Christmas, the phone started ringing in the Markley home. An older-sounding man with a raspy voice asked to speak to Ruth. When told she was asleep, he asked for John's sister, then hung up. At the time, Jean Mason thought little of it. People had been calling hoping for news. On Friday, December 29th, exactly 2 weeks after the disappearance, Linda answered the phone. The raspy-voiced man claimed to be holding John and Shelly hostage. He said they would be sacrificed to a cult on New Year's Eve unless he was paid $10,000 in cash. Then he hung up. Minutes later, he called back, said if they couldn't come up with the money, they could sell John's Corvette to raise it. Linda immediately called the sheriff's office. Detective Wayne Cottarelli supplied her with a recording device. On Sunday morning, New Year's Eve, the phone rang again. Jean flipped on the recording device. The man gave detailed instructions. Go to Rally's restaurant. Retrieve a note from a payphone coin slot. That note would give further instructions for delivering the money. Jean and Detective Cottarelli left for the restaurant. They found the note, handwritten, full of misspellings. It directed Jean to Kaufman's department store. Put the package between sweatshirts with penguin bird on them. Then wait by a telephone at J.C. Penney for 15 minutes. If no law is seen, a boy will give you a note with the address. Police filled a paper bag with dish towels to simulate the cash. Jean followed the instructions. Detective Michael Davis watched in plain clothes. Jean waited the 15 minutes. No boy came with a note. They tried the drop again. But then the raspy-voiced man called Linda at the house, agitated. I see the cops. You're not following my directions. He gave new instructions. McQuaid Sunoco gas station. Leave the bag in the restroom. Jean did as instructed. Detective Cottarelli positioned himself less than 50 yards away. Unobstructed view of the bathroom door. Less than 10 minutes later, someone in a hooded jacket entered the bathroom. Moments later, they emerged. A white car pulled up. The hooded figure climbed in. Before the car could pull out, deputies surrounded it. The driver? 45-year-old Stephen Durst of Warren. The person in the hooded jacket? Durst's teenage daughter. Neither of the Markleys were in the car. Neither was the fake money bag. It was still in the bathroom. As it turned out, Durst was not some random opportunist. He had a history with the family. Stephen Durst was a truck driver who'd fallen on hard times. John gave Durst a job driving his semi, allowed him and his 2 children to live in the home on Greenville Road. Stephen lived with the Markleys from October 1993 to June 1994. 8 months. But something went wrong during the summer of 1995. They had a heated dispute over money. John fired Durst, told him to find a new place to live. According to the family, John was so angry he withheld Durst's final paycheck, which was for $1,000. Durst made a lot of noise about that money. Detective Timko said, Durst was out of work when the Markleys disappeared. He told a lot of people that the Markleys owed him $1,000. John's sister said that during one argument, Stephen threatened to beat John with a 2x4. Durst was charged with extortion, held on $15,000 bond. On January 3, 1996, he pleaded not guilty. Investigators were unsure whether Durst was actually involved in the disappearance or just taking advantage of the situation. But it was hard to dismiss the coincidence. His anger over $1,000. The $1,000 check cashed the morning they vanished. The mystery man in the truck. After being released on bond, Durst agreed to take a polygraph. Prosecutors offered a plea deal if he could be cleared. William D. Evans, a polygraph examiner from Akron, conducted the test. Durst failed. Showed deception on questions about John and Shelly's fate. The examiner couldn't narrow it down to one specific question, but it could have been any of these. Were you involved in their disappearance in any way? Did you see them after they were reported missing? Do you know where they are now? Did you know in advance that they disappeared? The suggestion that Durst failed created cognitive dissonance for law enforcement. 2 sources stated publicly they did not believe Durst was involved. Sheriff Altier himself said, There's nothing we've found that would lead us to believe he has any involvement. It was theorized Durst became aware of the disappearance and tried to profit from it, but wasn't responsible. This was controversial. Other investigators and family members believed Durst knew much more than he was saying. Lead investigator Detective Jane Timko stated, "Since he's failed the polygraph, it indicates that he knows something about them." By August 1996, Durst's extortion case went to trial. The jury deliberated for 2.5 hours, found him guilty. Judge Andrew Logan sentenced Durst to 4 to 10 years at Lorraine Correctional Institution. Durst appealed 2 years later. The appeal was denied. He ended up serving just 4 years, walked out a free man, and has never been charged with anything related to John and Shelly's actual disappearance. Detective Timko said in 1996, "I truly believe Stephen Durst knows what happened to them, and he just won't say."
All right. So where does that leave us? We have a man named Stephen Durst who was fired by John, a man who claimed he was owed $1,000, the same amount Shelly cashed a check for an hour before she vanished. We have a man who failed a polygraph about their fate, spent 4 years in prison for extortion, and then walked out into the Ohio sun as a free man. In 2026, the Markley children are all grown up. Johnny, who wanted nothing but his parents for his 8th birthday, is now in his late 30s, grew up in a house filled with echoes of a coffee pot that boiled dry and a funeral that nobody attended. Think about the cruelty of this. Well, the family was at Bonnie's viewing, looking desperately at a door, hoping both John and Shelly would walk through, giving a frantic excuse to why they're late. Someone was likely already washing mud off their hands and their pants. This case isn't just about a missing couple. You gotta think about the 5 children here, left behind in the house, the lights on, doors unlocked and open. It's about the Bristolville silence that has lasted almost 30 years. If you're watching this in Trumbull County, if you remember a slender, dark-haired man suddenly with a pocket full of money, Christmas time in December of 1995, it's time. The cult story was a lie. The ransom was a distraction, but the trauma left in that house was very, very real. The truth isn't buried in a bank account. It's out there in the woods. And it's time that we brought John and Shelly back home. Now, few little things I want to bring to your attention before we cut this off now. John Markley Jr., born July 8th, 1959. Shelly Markley, born November 16, 1963. Both vanished on December the 15th of 1995. John would be 65 today if he were alive. Shelly would be 61. If you have any details, please contact the Trumbull County Sheriff's Office at 330-675-2508. One more time, 330-675-2508. I'm your host, Tony. I want to thank you all so much for tuning into the Cold Case Project today. I'll see you in our next video. God bless and take care.